Yo, I'm just trying to make pimping my stuff a little bit more fun. So I have a YouTube channel, which is where you're probably watching this. That's Postmortem Video. I have a second channel called Grimstream. It's not got the proper name yet, but if you search for it, you should find it. And if you're trying to stop sucking at the teat of YouTube, you can always head on over to BitChute and find me at Grim Jim. Hello, lovelies. Today we're taking a look at Wanderhome by J. Dragon. This was recommended in my chat after I talked about some of the more recent, less conventional Japanese games that I've been reviewing. And if you look this up, you will see that it won a bunch of awards, that it claims to draw on influences from things like the Moomins and Wind in the Willows and all of those sort of cozy, bucolic animal adventures, anthropomorphic animal adventures. So that's what it's supposed to be, a kind of light, fun story game invoking those kind of themes. What it actually is a very specifically designed weapon intended to give me an aneurysm. As you may or may not know, I had a medical event about a year ago, and I think this is an attempt to assassinate me, to follow up, to finish me off where the hospital issues couldn't. That probably sounds harsh, but I don't really think it is. I think this game misunderstands its source material. This may seem like an odd thing to say, but I think it also misunderstands anarchism. Basically, if something is dear to me, this game gets it wrong and makes me very, very angry. And I tried so hard to go through this without any prejudice, or I guess postjudice is probably a better name for it, and to give it a fair shake. But at every turn, it's set out to infuriate me in a number of different ways. This may be the very pinnacle of getting it wrong when it comes to gaming. This may be the very pinnacle of everything that is wrong with story gaming. It's a nice enough book as an object. It's square, it's quite big, it's nice and heavy, the paperbook quality is good. It's got a slipcover, which I am adamant on this, role-playing games should not have, right? It's not an art book that you will take out occasionally to flip through. It's not a novel that you might read once, maybe twice a year. It's a reference manual, and these things get damaged. Alright, they get damaged, they get crumpled, they get lost, and you rapidly lose any value that they might have added. So all they really are is an extra cost that you don't need. You know, and this shit set me back £50. I'm going to display it proudly in my bookcase as a lesson to me not to trust anything anyone says in the chat or the comments ever again, and what not to do. This probably seems incredibly harsh to you. After all, it's won all these awards, it's soft, it's nice, it's about cute little animals, but as I say, it seems to have been specifically designed to give me an aneurysm, to make a blood clot burst in my head and make my brain cease functioning. Why? Well, it gets my references that it claims wrong. It gets anarchism wrong. It's inspired by partially by one of the games I hate the most in the world, that being Apocalypse World. It uses Playbooks, which is a thing from Apocalypse World and a few other games. It seems to have become a thing for a lot of game development. I find it stifling and constricting and infuriating. It uses little phrases. It incorporates safety tools directly into the game. When you think a game about, cute little animals going on a bucolic journey through the countryside, it wouldn't need any of that. But what is the game itself about? You play a bunch of anthropomorphic animals who fit into a bunch of stereotypes. I thought that was bad, but never mind. And then you journey across the land of Heath, which is a fairly obvious way of trying to mangle the word Heath, I guess. Why are you travelling? No idea. What do you actually do in this game? No real idea either. Travel from place to place, avoiding danger, excitement, or adventure. So it would seem. So phrases seem to guide the game. So you can always say these phrases and they have certain trigger effects, which seems like a lot to learn for what's meant to be a simple game, but examples include, let's do this instead. So interfere in the game, completely derail everything anyone's trying to do. Do we want to? Again, interfering. If other people come up with an idea for something that they want the group to do, you can just kind of veto it there. Where to next? What do you think? Hold on. And no. Right, this is probably the most telling. Now, I'm not one of these yes and improv people. That can be useful. I prefer no but this is just flat no. No one can ever make you do something you don't want to do. If some aspect of the journey doesn't fit your needs, you can always change it. So you are empowered directly from the book text to fuck the whole game up if you don't like something for any reason. No, I don't want to go to the swamp. No, I don't want someone to treat my character like this. No, this passage from the book doesn't seem right for the journey we're on. Let's change it. Alright, that is how you all but guarantee that your game is going to get fucked up by someone being an absolute cunt during it. But like I say, I tried not to be prejudiced, but the warning signs were definitely there. Neopronouns in the introductory text. Z, zer, which I guess ironically in Chinese would be pronounced she. But yeah. Right. I feel bad about being triggered, I guess, by the presence of neopronouns. I love my trans and non-binary comrades, but I've also had enough experiences with activists and the neopronoun to know that they are just horrible people, intolerable to be around. Alright, so having that so early in the book, maybe I'm prejudiced, maybe it's post-judiced, because, I've run into these people plenty of times before, and they are absolutely horrendous people to be around. Unfortunately, because the cause is just and good, and the only thing that lets it down are the people fighting for it. So yeah, those phrases are that's another red flag. And also the game, like so many I've reviewed recently, it's in tension with itself, right? Because there's no dice. Again, misunderstanding anarchism there. Anarchism, it's what they say in V for Vendetta. It's not the land of take what you want. It's the land of do as you please, and it means without leaders, not without order, right? Voluntary order. is what makes it different. So that doesn't mean if you're writing an anarchist game, there shouldn't be a games master who is there as an arbitrator of the rules, who is there by your consent and their consent to run the game, and they are extremely useful as someone you can appeal to. But that's not the default style of play in this. Instead, it's not really a role-playing game. It's a somewhat cooperative meta-narrative story game, which is the same problem that I have with Apocalypse World. But yeah, it's in tension with itself, because there's all this blather about phrases and safety tools. You know, the dreaded X card makes an appearance, script change, which is one I'm not familiar with, lines and veils, which I know, safety checklists, fuck them. So the safety tools are baked in, and it suggests that you use others in a game about cutesy animals crossing the world for no readily apparent reason, right? It's awfulness upon awfulness upon awfulness. But it's in tension because in order to accomplish stuff, really, you have to get tokens. And you get tokens by doing things that would trigger the safety tools or your capacity to say no and so on, which you could just use to abuse the whole system anyway. But things like giving stuff away or being uncomfortable, you know, inconveniencing yourself, setting your needs aside, all of that kind of thing, inconveniences, bumps in the road, whatever, that are in tension with the idea of safety tools and giving everyone simultaneously equal narrative control. Oi Gewalt. Characters are defined by narrow and limited playbooks. Places, which is the key component of the game really, are also limited by tight narrative components. Again, it's still not really clear what you do. Travel from place to place fixing problems, but there's very little information about what kind of problems you might be solving or how, and it's explicitly anti-violence. So let's go off on a tangent there, right? If you're claiming your influences are like the works of Tove Jansson, or you know, The Wind in the Willows, or Peter Firmin's Diary of a Country Rat, or Trouble for Trumpets, stuff like that, those are replete with violence, right? Moomin Troll is handy with a knife. Moomin Papa is strapped, right? Practically any excuse he can get, he takes out his musket. Finnish snipers, what are you going to do, right? In The Wind in the Willows, one of the key scenes is when Molly, Ratty and Badger fight the weasels in the Battle of Toad Hall, right? To take it back from the criminal element for their friend Toad. Now, you could probably make some kind of class-based criticism of that, but my point is that violence, the solving of problems through physicality, is very much a part of the sources upon which this claims to draw, but then it's explicitly anti-violence. The world itself is kind of interesting, I suppose. It's got its own year system and seasons and festivals. It's all very, very structured. Very, very structured indeed, which again kind of goes against the kind of fast and loose things that you might expect of a story game. Oh god, a wheelchair, right? Because if you're going to play a crow, you definitely don't want to fly, but that's not enough. You want to not be able to walk either. And in a game explicitly about travelling from one place to another, yeah, the rest of the party definitely wants to haul Wheelie McGee here from place to place. No. And alright, and these are the playbooks. So you pick a role, already very tight and not very story game friendly, and then you just make a bunch of choices, and those give you even more vetoes and capabilities to just say stuff into the game without moderation. There's a bunch of them, some aspects of them are interesting, I suppose, but you can't get past the fact that they are still playbooks, and therefore inherently limiting and deeply triggering for me, because to me those kind of extremely limited versions of a class system are just antithetical to the supposed goals of role-playing. I like some of the ideas, like the moth tender, the postal service runs through moths. Yeah, that's pretty cool, right? And other aspects of the world. The moths deliver messages, homing moths, I suppose. But in place of herd animals and things, what you have instead are insects. So, great big fuzzy bumblebees in place of cows and sheep and whatever. Anyway, there's a bunch of these, which helps, I guess, but I just can't get past the fact that they are playbooks. Right, so there's a bunch of those. We can go through, blah, 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 blah. Traits are things that characters might have, that non-player characters might have, that places might have. Again, this is kind of like playbooks, but for locations and NPCs, and therefore, again, inherently limiting. Oh, one of the rules at the start is that everyone you meet has a good heart. Well, it's kind of hard to have a villain, if that's the case, isn't it, really? They have special traits called magical traits or witchy traits, and they have special traits called traumatized traits. So you might want to play a slightly darker game with some darker themes. You're probably shit out of luck, because anyone at the table can veto the use of either of those, and if you've already got a character created with those kind of traits, well, fuck you, I guess. More talk about locations. Again, this is like having playbooks for locations, which again is inherently limiting, and so forth. At least the art's nice, I suppose. Oh yeah, whoever wrote this book had just discovered the word liminal. It appears throughout the book, when simpler or clearer language would often have been a better choice. Okay, look, it's a square book, unconventional format. The text is very large, okay, and the margins are enormous. When it comes to the artwork pages, that's fine, but the game stuff could have been compressed down. I think I would have rather seen this as a cheaper, more accessible pocket format book, like A5 or something, rather than blowing £50 on a lot of empty space, especially at the cost of living crisis. Cheaper is more accessible. We get some information on the kind of implicit background. Again, this is kind of like a playbook. It's extremely structured, while at the same time chaotic, because anyone can interrupt at any point and change anything about the ongoing story game. So the best way to play this might be by yourself as an exercise in structured storytelling, but otherwise you might as well write a fucking novel. Just, bite the bullet, get over yourself, do that. Oh, mercifully, we're getting to the end of this book. Yet another season. Again, more playbook entries. It's gonna get samey after a while if you play like a campaign of it. Bunch of dedications and backers. It's fairly clear that this was a papal indulgence game that I'd never heard of until someone suggested it in the chat. So, yeah, this is an assassination attempt on me because of the games that it references that I hate, because it claims to be influenced by children's books and stories that meant a huge amount to me growing up, and then fundamentally misunderstands and misrepresents them because it is set up and meant to be a GM-less story game, which is just pure chaos. And chaos is not anarchy. It misunderstands anarchism. It misunderstands a a lot of things. This seems to me like the kind of game, I call them papal indulgences, that people buy to show their right on this, that they are politically correct and that they are sensitive and understanding to everyone's issues and whatever else, and buy it because the writers are queer or women or whatever else, and the book spends a lot of time saying, this is virtuous. Just make a good game and sell me on the game. It doesn't matter, right? And this is what we should all aim for when it comes to prejudice. It doesn't matter what you are. What matters is whether the game is any good. So to whoever suggested this, I hate you. This cost me a lot of money. I hate it. But I am going to put it in pride of place on my shelves to remind me not to do this. I fucking hate it. A lot. I wasn't going to review it today, but because it wastes so much of its room, there's not a lot here to review, really. A rip-off. And shit. It's like, this is the role-playing equivalent of sitting in a cafe pretending to read Camus to look intellectual and interesting in the hopes that some girl from an early philosophy course at university sees you reading it and thinks you're intellectually hot or whatever. That's what this is. In terms of style, the artwork's lovely. The background information on the world is quite nice and interesting, more interesting than the game attached to it. It wastes a lot of space. This is a book that could have been a fraction of the size and still retained all the character and everything, but it's not that. It coulda, woulda, shoulda. So in terms of style, I mean, there's so much wasted space that the art can't rescue it from that, and the writing is not great. The style of game that is going to emerge from this is going to be incredibly frustrating to a lot of people. The lack of a system really is, and so yet simultaneously it's a highly constricting system. That's going to be annoying. That all affects the style score, just purely really because of the art. I'll give it a 3 in terms of style. And in terms of substance, there's not a lot of here. 2 maybe for the background information, world information. Maybe if you took a different system like Golden Sky Stories or Fate Accelerated or something, and just use the background ideas and some of the other bits as inspiration, you could get a much better game out of this. But it is what it is. So 3 out of 5 for style, purely on the art. 2 out of 5 for substance. You can get something out of it if you work hard at it. 5 out of 10. 2.5 out of 5. Average, which feels like a high score to give it. You won't get much out of it unless you really work hard at it. And they were trying to kill me. Zang. Welcome to St. Cloud is a system-agnostic setting of atmospheric, surreal horror and investigation by Miguel Ribeiro. An isolated town set amongst forests and mountains, St. Cloud is a closed community of eccentrics and oddities. While system-agnostic, guideline statistics are provided for actual fucking monsters. You can get Welcome to St. Cloud at post-mort.com, lulu.com and drive-thru-RPG.
Well, I look at it myself as the beginning, really, of an exploration. That's the reason we're exploring. You don't know what you'll run into on an exploration. What the sky looks like, what the stars look like. Do they still twinkle, or are they a steady light when you get outside the atmosphere?
I don't like I have, okay, like a lot of you, I hate a lot, you know? But I hate with style and creativity.